Now live on an all-new episode of Robert Conway Live with Samuel Roberts. On this episode, we'll be giving you another update on the Secret Empire comic book event from Marvel, and we'll be talking extensively about Far Cry 5, what's the deal, and whether or not, well, SJWs are going to be happy or disappointed with the game, and all that good jazz that goes along with that. Before we jump into the Far Cry, we'll go ahead and start with our Secret Empire update here.
Okay, when we last left off, Cobra, no, it's not Cobra. Who are they again? Hydra.
Hydra, yes.
Hydra had taken over the educational system and was making everybody worship non-Hitler.
Right.
Whereas the heroes were struggling to regain a cube that was floating in orbit. Was that right?
It wasn't floating in orbit. It's been scattered across the planet.
Oh,
essentially, okay. Yeah. So that's basically where that's going on. With this issue, they touched a little bit more on the cube, a little bit more. You have Hawkeye and his faction of Avengers. I believe they were going to Canada, or they were going to some other domain. And in the issue, it was heavily implied that that domain was under the control of Ultron, which, for those who haven't been following what's up with Ultron, Ultron had merged with Hank Pym.
Who?
Hank Pym was the original Ant-Man, and the guy that created Ultron, essentially. Is different from the movie version. That's actually
Ultron was a Transformers guy.
Oh, it sounds like he could be a Transformers guy. Ultron was essentially he was the villain in the second Avengers movie.
Oh yeah, he had an age, didn't he?
He had an age. There was an age of Ultron at one point. So definitely, that's one of the things that was going on with that. And like I said, that's still a developing point. They didn't really encounter Ultron yet. One of the other plot points that was kind of continuing, it seems that Captain Marvel and the rest of the, I want to say Alpha Flight and all the other spacefaring heroes are still stranded. It seems like a bunch of aliens were not happy with what was going on. They didn't want to help out Captain Marvel and those space heroes. They're actually happy that the planet is cut off from the galaxy, essentially, that it's sort of encased in this kind of, how do I put it, shield.
So these space-trapped heroes, what are they? Are they on some kind of space station? Is that how this works?
I don't even know if they're on a space station at this point. It looks like they had moved planets, or they had, they moved away from the planet. They didn't really explain that too much. I think they were hoping that there would be a tie-in. That's one of those plot holes that's kind of, open for filling in.
So they all just kind of left. They were fighting. Where'd the aliens go?
Oh, the aliens are still trying to attack. Because Captain America has hidden away a Chitauri queen, and that's what's causing them to come back and keep on it. Chitauri queen. The name of the alien was the Chitauri.
So Captain America stole their queen, and that's why they're attacking.
Yeah, that's what I was able to get from the plot. Like I said, a lot of that's still kind of developing, I think. But here's the only kicker that really needs to go. Remember that hero that we couldn't figure out who they were talking about, Quasar?
Vaguely.
Yeah, Quasar's not dead.
Oh, is that the one that died? That we
thought had died. The guy eaten. So I was like, what? Really? I thought you were dead. They had her lying in a bed in some kind of room or space station or something, and that's what was kind of going on with that. As far as we know. But I think the biggest kicker with this issue was the appearance of the Punisher at the end. And, the Punisher is probably one of my favorite Marvel characters. And in a way, he sort of parallels Deadpool as far as how they both admire Captain America. And what was interesting, though, is that like Deadpool, turns out the Punisher is now working with Hydra, which is kind of out there. You wouldn't think that all of a sudden, oh hey, the Punisher is working for a big government group. The end of the issue essentially had the Punisher killing a Z-list villain that was part of the Sinister Six from a book that Nick Spencer had did called The Superior Foes of Spider-Man, which was sort of a more humorous story about villains, and it was very, very sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of. This character, I don't know if he was Captain Boomerang is what he was calling himself or something like that. Some really cheesy Z-list villain has suddenly sort of risen to the ranks of being a crime boss. And earlier in the issue, he had helped Black Widow get some information on Captain America. And it seems that the Punisher is stepping in and sort of eliminating that loose end. But with all the plot points aside, there was one thing that just kind of made me cringe, was the last line of the book. The Punisher said something along the lines of, maybe I could be your punishment. It was weird. It gave off like a very homosexual BDSM vibe to me. And it was like, really? You couldn't think of better dialogue to put there?
I'll be honest, this whole thing sounds cringeworthy to me.
Yeah. So that's where we were left off with that. We'll see how the Punisher plays into things. The tie-in that I decided to read was Deadpool issue 31. In this issue, basically it takes place before issue 0, Secret Empire, and it has Deadpool. Basically, he was tasked to hunt down and kill Agent Phil Coulson, who had recently been brought into the comics. Basically, Phil Coulson, for those of you who don't follow the Marvel movies or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he was a character that was sort of introduced into the movie universe and kind of brought the heroes together in the first sort of wave.
He's a movie original character?
Yeah, he's a movie original character, believe it or not. And like I said, they eventually brought him into the comics a few years ago. And in this issue, Deadpool was tasked to kill with him. And, the whole sort of thing kind of... one of the better things I would say is it kind of fleshed out why Deadpool was on the Unity Squad, which was a team of Avengers that Captain America had put back after X-Men versus Avengers. And what it was is like, okay, well, with Wolverine now dead, they needed somebody who would be willing to kill if necessary. And they figured, hey, Deadpool is that guy. So this was basically a mercenary assignment for Deadpool. And the issue was basically just him going after Phil Coulson. And what you don't see is you don't see a body at the end. So it is possible that Coulson could still be alive.
If he wasn't, would that mean anything?
It's tough to tell. I mean, they bring these characters back, and to be honest, they killed him off in the movies, and then they brought him back on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that was the whole thing. The only thing that really, I would say, really brings it up is the fact that Phil Coulson, it was heavily implied that he knew that something was off about Captain America before the other heroes did. before that whole event in issue 0 happened. So it was pretty much just Captain America sort of tying up loose ends. So, I mean, something could happen where Phil Coulson ends up showing up later on in Secret Empire or something, and that could be a whole thing. But as far as we know, it's not. And with all that stuff set aside, I think that the Deadpool tie-in was probably more enjoyable and more interesting than some of the other stuff that was coming out.
Does not sound surprising. Sounds like a pretty low bar to clear, honestly.
Yeah, it is a pretty low bar. I mean, I have to say that the guy writing Deadpool, I did meet him at one point, and generally speaking, he is one of Marvel's better writers. Granted that everything that he's writing has more of a humor shtick to it, but he's not afraid to sort of embrace the darker elements of Deadpool, which is something we saw in the issue. So that's pretty much it. I think that sums up what I know on Secret Empire right now. You have any thoughts on that, or do you want to move on to Far Cry?
My thoughts are pretty unchanged. I just wanted to get the latest update on the cube that turned Captain America into a Nazi.
Yeah.
So they don't have the cube yet.
They don't have the cube yet, and it looks like they're having some difficulty. Both sides are sort of having difficulties getting to it. So we'll see how that plays out as far as that's concerned.
Well, do give me the latest updates as the situation develops.
Of course. All right. So this was something. Far Cry 5 came out, and the initial reaction I had was, "Oh, great! Here we go again with the political stuff in entertainment."
It was announced. It didn't come out, right?
Right. It's announced. It's not coming out till March of next year.
Next year. Okay, so it's not for a good long while then.
Right. And definitely, it sounds like it had been in development for a while now. This edition of Far Cry. It's the first one to take place in Montana, or not just Montana, but in the United States, in the Western world, not some exotic location like an island or anything like that. Now, I will say this: I've never really played the Far Cry games. I played a little bit of Blood Dragon, which was like an 80s spin-off, retro spin-off that was just kind of off the wall.
Well, Blood Dragon was very entertaining.
Yeah, it did have some very entertaining moments, and I might revisit that at some point. But with this installment, the first thing that I saw was they released this teaser photo, and it was sort of a Last Supper kind of thing. You have a cult leader in the middle. You have some hillbilly-looking guys off to the side, one of which has been compared to the bass player from Mastodon. No surprise there. I wouldn't surprise if that was intentional or not. And
of intentional, several alt-right figures have said, "Hey, that's me."
Yeah.
Fox Day, I think one that looks kind of like Richard Spencer, etc. And it's kind of an uncanny resemblance. It would not surprise me at all if it's deliberate.
Yeah. So there is, so we do, you do see some stuff like that. But this teaser poster, beyond that, one of the interesting things was the American flag itself. It has this cult symbol on it that's sort of embedded into the image of the flag. And then in the background, you see a church with that flag that's flying over the American flag. And from there, that's pretty much what you got. I saw some more liberal-minded people in social media talking about, "Oh, yay, we get to shoot up, white supremacists or white Trump voters and whatnot," and just your typical left-wing murder fantasy going in there, or as far as that's concerned. I don't think the game's going to necessarily go that direction. Because of the sort of the development cycle, and two, the fact that there is some interesting symbolism going on with the cult itself. It was sort of announced that the cult is going by the name of Eden's Gate, which if you've ever had an inkling to sort of, how do I put it, to look into cults, there's a famous one called Heaven's Gate. So that's something that comes to mind. It's like, okay, well,
guys who cut their dicks off and tried to catch Halley's Comet.
I didn't know it was that. I thought it was just a straight up murder. They killed themselves. Suicide.
They had a very elaborate mythology that involved everyone losing their gender, which I believe meant castration. Ooh. And then they all committed suicide on the idea that they would catch a ride to Halley's Comet, which was coming at that point in time. So, I think that's a fairly obvious intentional reference. But Heaven's Gate was a very, very hippie kind of thing. They were located in California, I believe San Francisco.
It was either there or San Diego.
Yes, it was
one of those kind of.
It was a 90s Southern California city. Very, very strong hippie vibe. They all wore identical white robes. They really honestly had kind of nothing in common with the teaser image, which is very, very much an SJW's idea of what white America would look like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There is definitely something to be said about that as well.
I'm not sure that there's really much significance there beyond the name. I'm looking at a widescreen version of the key art, I guess it's called, and that is a very pretty picture. A lot of information.
Oh, yeah.
If you look off onto the left, I don't know if anyone's looking at it right now, but there's just a bear that's just standing there and growling. And then there's the Dukes of Hazzard busting through a barn like they did in old TV shows. Weirdly enough, there's also a black guy on the right holding a gun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if he's intended to be part of the group or not, because he clearly has a seat at the table, but he is looking away from them and is also dressed differently. The white people are all in kind of a grayish motif, and he is very, very clearly wearing red, along with the kind of hippie-looking dude next to him. So, it's a beautiful piece of art, and honestly, between the two, I'd rather be hanging out with the fundamentalists. They look like they're having a grand old time.
I could see that.
When I played BioShock Infinite, did you ever play BioShock Infinite?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so BioShock Infinite. A large portion of it deals with the fact that the ruling white population on the floating magical island were kind of a bunch of dicks to their underclass.
Mm-hmm.
And the underclass eventually revolted. And one thing that I always never understood was, why not just leave?
Yeah.
You're not being kept as slaves. You can just walk off. And the other thing is, of course, if I had a magical floating quantum island, I'd want to be able to pick who got to hang out on my island.
That would make sense.
I side with the people who want to have people like them on their island. Go for it. It's your floating island. But no, this is very, very obviously a Christian kind of deal. If you look at a lot of it, you'll see the word sinner on the buildings in the background.
Yeah.
Or on the guy in front of them who is castigated and down and hands tied with rope. And man, that is a really beautiful piece of art. You could honestly mistake that guy for real if you were just looking at that. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, I heard that they really went into Montana to get like a sense of, the area.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't really play the Far Cry game, so I doubt I'll pick it up. It looks like a ton of fun. I see you get to ride a little four-wheel drive sports vehicle in the back. Maybe go fishing. Have tigers jumping at you when you fish.
Oh yeah.
Great time. Looks like a great, but between the two, I'm more likely to side with the cult than the hippies.
Oh yeah. Well, I am looking here a little bit more, and I do remember from watching some of the trailers, even though you get that impression that it is a sort of a white person's cult, there are some cultists that there is like a black guy that's a cultist as well. At least from what I remember seeing from the trailer. But yeah, I just pulled up the same key art, and I have to say there's a lot more to it than what I remember first looking at.
Yeah, if you look at the big wide version, it's really a pretty good art. Very beautiful.
Now I did want to bring this up. The cultist symbol. Have you examined that a little bit? The sort of
Yeah, reminds me of an iron cross.
I right now I want you to go ahead and take a look at the Scientology church symbol.
All right, let's take a look. Scientology. Oh man, I can't spell symbol. Yeah, it's kind of two interlocking triangles with an S.
Not that one. There's a cross as well. If you look,
Scientology cross. Yeah, I kind of see it.
You see the sort of the resemblance there.
Yeah, it definitely does look a little similar. What does an iron cross look like? Yeah, and it's more similar to the Scientology one than it does to an iron cross. It has those that kind of interlocking X on it.
Yeah, which I also think was pretty intentional.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be the first time that I would think that Scientology has sort of been satirized or satirized in video games. Those familiar with the Dead Space series will remember Unitology, a popular cult that several scientists seem to worship in the Dead Space universe, and their monolithic marker, which is I would argue is definitely a clear callback to Scientology as far as that's concerned. So we definitely have some of that.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least. I think that oh shit, my light's running out. That's not good. There is, from the perspective of the game designers, there's a lot of similarity between Scientology and Christianity. I doubt they view the two as separate.
Yeah.
They're probably very typical California, or are they based?
They're Canadian. They're
Canadian. It's
from
kind of the same.
Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal.
Yeah.
Essentially, belief-wise, Montreal is the same as California now. There's not much difference.
Pretty much.
Kind of upper class, liberal, elitist, anti-religion. So from their perspective, I doubt there's much difference between Scientology and Christianity. If anything, they'd be less likely to criticize Scientology.
Yeah, I could see that. So sort of moving on from the cultist thing. Did you read up any more on the game or see the full trailer or anything like that?
I didn't see the trailer. It didn't sound like there's a lot of information yet.
Because I was surprised by the trailer is pretty impactful. So basically, the game's background information is this. Basically, the players put in the role of being a local police officer. Apparently, you can go ahead and customize the character. It's not a set character, but you can make them look like whatever you want to make them look like. In theory, they could be black, white, Asian, Hispanic, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then even going into more of it, definitely seeing sort of the resistance thing going on.
The cult, I remember the cult has taken over Montana somehow.
Yeah, or at least that county of Montana.
Without, being immediately smashed by the federal government.
Right. Or local citizens, which it looks like some local citizens are taking matters into their own hands. Then, believe it or not, I believe there's a preacher in there, an evangelical preacher who's going to be one of your main allies in the game.
Oh, well, if they put in a preacher, you can't get upset because they made a preacher a good guy, so it's not anti-religion.
Yeah, so like I said, there's stuff like that. So it's like I think the cult is they're drawing from that because you do have generally speaking. I'm being up here in Idaho. You do hear about sort of communities that sort of keep themselves closed in, at least like Mormon communities, which I think there might be a little bit of a parallel, not a whole lot, just because those communities keep to themselves and I don't think are any kind of threat to the general populace. So pretty much up in that sort of end of the country, you have these communities that are like that. I know that at least in the east end of Idaho, we have it's either the north or the east end. There's a Mormon community that kind of just lives off the land, and they come into town maybe like once a year just to do some trading and get stuff that they can't make on their own.
Oh yeah,
stuff like gunpowder. And
seriously buy gunpowder? Is it Oregon Trail?
I don't know the details. This is just third-hand stuff that I've been told about, be honest. So, I can kind of see that too. One of the things Ubisoft says they wanted to capture sort of the independence, the mistrust in government that comes in this part of the country. So, I mean, there might be a slight criticism in that area, but I don't think it's going to be the bleeding heart liberal shoot fest that
I think you're giving them way too much credit.
Yeah,
I
this is the second time I've been guilty of giving people credit. I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong or if I'm right. Time will tell. I would love to see the Antifa types look at this and just get disappointed once the game comes out by how it is, or just something like that. That would make my day more than anything else.
I'm kind of disappointed that you can't side with the cool looking militia guys.
Yeah.
Now you had mentioned before that you thought it wasn't going to be much of an alt-right thing just by the fact of the development cycle.
Pretty much of the development cycle.
You said a 4-year development cycle?
Yeah, that's what I heard. It was a 4-year development cycle, which would put us around 2013. Which would
4 years at all, and it's coming out next. You'd be looking at 2014, right?
Right. So you'd be looking at 2014, 2013. That would have mean that they would have started the game like right smack dab in the middle of Obama's second term.
Which would have been, around the time of Bundy Ranch.
Right. So I would think that it would probably be closer to Bundy Ranch as far as criticism goes. I don't think it would be an alt-right criticism because I don't think the alt-right really existed at that time.
No, it's absolutely amazing how fast the alt-right came into being, honestly.
Yeah. So definitely, like I said, I don't think that timetable adds up. If you lean to the right and you're an American, of course you're going to be a little taken aback, but at the same time, like, maybe not so much. There's going to be, it could surprise you. I know we brought up BioShock Infinite, but if you look at the original BioShock, in a way that was a bit of a criticism of objectivism and Ayn Rand. But if you really look at it, it wasn't so much a negative thing. In the end, Andrew Ryan wasn't really the villain. This was just a set of circumstances that caused all that stuff to happen. So, I mean,
Well, no, I kind of disagree with that. BioShock was an extremely strong criticism of libertarianism.
Yeah.
It was an extremely strong criticism. It was honestly one of the better criticisms of libertarianism I've seen. Certainly one of the most sophisticated. It's an excellent example of how the libertarian ideology can create a race to the bottom effect.
Mm-hmm.
Where, not to get too off track, but you remember how everybody had to shoot in these plasmids.
Oh, yeah.
which made you stronger but had devastating side effects if used too much.
Right.
The libertarian environment aboard or below, God, I can't even remember. What did they call that thing?
Rapture?
Yeah. Down in Rapture, the libertarian environment down there meant that you basically had no choice but to overdose on plasmids, because if you didn't, you'd lose your job to someone who was willing to overdose overdose on plasmids. So
Yeah.
you either had no choice but to go crazy or starve to death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I kind of got the sense that when you came down, maybe that I'm just making this up, you were indentured somehow, you were somehow in debt, and you couldn't just walk out.
Oh yeah, there was sort of the whole thing about freedom of choice in there.
Yeah, I think that, but I could be wrong. But I thought that illustration of how libertarian philosophy could just lead to a total systemic collapse had any number of real world criticism. It parallels, you're familiar with the race to the bottom theory in just, as a general thing.
Not too much. I've actually never heard of that before.
The race to the bottom theory says that it is inevitable in a system where you have global competition that environmental protections will go to shit. Working conditions will go to shit because all the work will go where the environmental laws are the shittiest, because it can be done cheaper there. It will go where people can be, hired the cheapest. And so you, as a nation, you have no choice but to get rid of your worker protection laws, or at least not enact new ones, because otherwise, the multinationals who are supplying the foundation of your income will just pack up and go somewhere else, which is what you saw happening in Southeast Asia. What would happen repeatedly in Southeast Asia, I did some very moderate work for the fashion industry in Southeast Asia. And one of the things they talked about was how textile business was jumping around from one country to another. Went to, I think, China first. But as conditions rose in China, as people started to get wealthier, wage costs rose, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And when that happened, instead of paying the higher wages, it became cheaper to do it in Vietnam. And then from Vietnam to, I want to say, Laos, maybe, the Philippines. And from there all the way down to, they were happily talking about how great it was that we can now work in fucking Myanmar or Burma, which is because these guys are just coming out of a military dictatorship. And so they're still willing to work for pennies.
Right.
So that is the race to the bottom effect in the real world. And in the end, I guess in that aspect, it's more of a critique of globalism than it is of libertarianism, but it's the same fundamental principle. And BioShock, I think, had an extremely sophisticated, I guess you could say, allegory for that, which I thought was very underappreciated. And then BioShock Infinite was just fucking retarded. Yeah.
Basically. So I mean, that's where I thought that criticism went. But I think the other thing, this one's kind of humorous because it's so blatantly that it was fake. Did you hear about the petition that came out?
Oh, yes. I think someone on 4chan started it.
Yeah. And it was funny because a lot of people took it pretty seriously. And then others, you just read it and it's like, well, this is obviously a joke. Just to sort of troll the media.
Can you read a little of it for me?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull up because there's one line in particular from it that I thought was the dead giveaway. That, once you read that line, it's kind of like, well, obviously this is a fake here. Let's see here. Petition. I came up the first one. It was a change.org petition. I'll scroll down to the text here. The funny thing is there is people signing it. I think it's at just under 2,000 individuals that have signed it. I don't want to sign it right now, or if ever. Anyways, let me, just because I know it's not real. Enough is enough, Ubisoft. We sat through your multicultural lectures and your preachy games aimed at degenerates and miscreants. We've tolerated it in the name of gameplay design and innovation, but no more, with an exclamation point. Far Cry 5 is an insult to your fan base, the Americans who make up the majority of your customers. And it's time that you woke up to that fact. Change this or cancel it. Us gamers have had to endure a lot of crap over the last few years. The targeted harassment by mainstream press through Gamergate, the terrible launch and outright lies of highly anticipated video games, the outright censorship of art through localization policies, the continued rejection of romantic partners when they find out our hobby, the appropriation of our culture by so-called gamers on Twitter. No more. That last part was the part that I thought was the dead giveaway. It's time to draw a line in the sand. We American gamers that make up the majority of your user base demand you to cancel this game or alter it to be less offensive to your main player base. In these times, you must understand that there might be some violent repercussions if you intend to follow through with your pointless criticism. So here are the...
Okay, keep going. I didn't realize it was...
Keep going. Yeah. So here are the following suggestions to make your game right. Change the villain. It's not so hard, really. Just change the villains to something more realistic. Islam is on the rise in America and as violence of the inner city gangs. Are you scared to do so? In the words of Voltaire, to learn who rules you, simply find out who's not being criticized. After the villains, even if you insist on making the villains American Christians, consider mixing the races a bit too, not to target white people exclusively. There are plenty of nationalities of every stripe and every race and creed. So throw in some blacks and Mexicans. There's no reason a protectionist nationalist movement would be all one race. Why stop being politically correct there? After the plot, it's obvious that you continue to insist on using these characters. However, with a few artistic tweaks, you can save the concept entirely. Have the villains simply be misguided patriots forced into making their own nation versus the will of an oppressive over-government constructed of all people they turn...
Okay, I think that's enough of that. No
yeah.
This idiot's thought on game design. Insofar as it represents a political organizing among white gamers, I'm definitely in favor of the petition, though I don't know I'm going to sign it. That, for instance, that kind of petition is why SJWs are so effective.
Oh, yeah.
Not numerically, but because they whine and pitch a fit. Whining and pitching a fit is how stuff gets done. So I definitely am in favor of it from that aspect. Again, I don't know anything about Far Cry, and I do think this might be someone's idea of a prank, so I don't know about giving them my signature and email address. But in terms of the general idea of saying, we're not happy with this at all, I think that's just fine.
Right. From that point, I kind of get that. But the part that gets me is the talking about being rejected by romantic partners. Yeah. That's someone. That's where I obviously see it.
It's someone trying to be funny, and you can't control who makes these petitions, obviously.
Right. I made a petition once trying to get Five Finger Death Punch to play at Trump's inauguration. That didn't go over at all. But
isn't Five Finger Death Punch just a regular punch?
I think so. Yeah. But yeah, I was looking here. The other thing that was interesting, Voltaire.
Mhm.
Voltaire with a B.
Oh yeah, it's either a troll or
Not
an idiot. Honestly, it kind of sounds like a 4chaner trying to be funny.
right.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that.
Which, yeah, it's like, yeah, okay. So that was that part. I guess they put in an update at some point. Here's some other interesting update. I was hoping to update this petition in regards to the success we're seeing on our mission, but change.org decided to attempt to censor this petition by refusing access. They were just updating their servers, but we all know the truth. Next paragraph here. I've seen a lot of claims that this petition promotes violence. Stop, morons. I was merely pointing out that the groups they target may feel slighted and revolt against them. It's a safety concern. That's all.
I think that's just fine. Let a bunch of people think, oh, if we don't give these young whites what they want, they'll hurt us. That's another reason that the left has been very effective.
Right.
I'm not going to not denounce them there by any means.
Let's see. But in their efforts to smear gamers, and this one gamer right here in particular, the mainstream games media and idiots on the internet have decided that since they can't target the argument, they have to find the man and target him. Look at who they think or will say. I am in order to derail the true mission of this petition and the rights of gamers everywhere.
Oh, if the left is attempting to dox him, then he definitely knows he's on the right track.
Yeah. Some random SJW journo. Great, guys. Just great. Crap yourselves almost immediately by saying this successful petition is just a false flag. 2 specific random SJW journos. Double crap yourselves again. Thinking 2 idiots who stumbled onto this petition first must have created it. And CNN killed OJ's wife, right? Idiots.
Yeah, it's a 4chaner.
Definitely.
It's a 4chaner who's probably not super old. He's probably a college kid or maybe a high school kid.
Right.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but yeah, there's some humor thrown into this here. We'll go through this. Some of the stuff these are some tweets by people. This is some of the funniest stuff I've ever read.
Give me some of these tweets, people commenting about the petition.
Yeah, these are tweets about the petition. And this was by somebody named Marlene!
Well, he's got some smart commentary to make.
Yeah. Petition to cancel Far Cry 5. I refuse to believe this is not a joke, and I'm really excited for this game. SOS Sawaski looks like a white guy with a fedora and a beard.
Oh boy.
Joe M. Fox. Nobody's taking this outrageous parody seriously, right? Laura Shortridge. You haven't seen this. Or this, which I guess one's a CNN link. This was a tag to somebody else. Anyways, yeah, it's mostly just.
Well, it sounds like it's offending all the right people.
Yeah, pretty much. So we'll see. These petitions usually don't turn out that way. I've signed some change.
They're not going to cancel or change the game.
Yeah.
That's not happening. But it's not necessarily the goal of the petition.
Right. So, there's some funny ones down here. YouTube, remove wrestling from offensive content list.
Is that a petition? Or?
Yeah, there was another petition down there.
All right, well, I don't know if we need to go over other...
No, probably not. That's something that caught my eye. But that was the text of the petition in its sort of entirety there. I don't know if there's anything to really say about that, other than we'll probably wait to see if more comes out about the game in E3.
I assume so. E3 is in just a little over a week.
Yeah.
10 days.
It will definitely do something for that. I think for E3, I definitely will try and get Reggie on here and just make it more of a pure games and debating on what's going to be good, what's going to be disappointing, what's awesome, what's not awesome as far as E3 is concerned.
Well, there should be a couple good announcements, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Ubisoft, I think a new Assassin's Creed is going to get its official announcement, and we'll see.
The last one I bought I still can't get it to work.
Which was the last one that you bought?
The one in England. I forget what it's called. But
Syndicate. Yeah, that was the last new one that they came out with.
I was pretty hyped. I got it for a good deal and was all hyped to play it. It doesn't work right.
Really?
Yeah. I get to the first mission and it doesn't load the cutscene. It just deposits me in the world with nothing to do. It's supposed to load a cutscene, and instead it bugs out every time I've tried.
That's pretty weird. That's
I've got a fairly standard configuration. I played the shit out of Black Flag and other kind of Black Flag sequel that takes place in the colonies.
Right.
It was great games, and I was all excited for Syndicate. Can't get it to work.
Yeah.
But no great loss. I've set myself the task of clearing the first Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior. The game is fucking hard.
Dragon Warrior, I heard that one was like an Asian, what's it called? An Asian themed Dark Souls.
This is an old one. This is a 1986 game.
Oh, wow.
1986, this was the very first major console RPG.
The very first, huh?
At least as far as I know. There may have been a couple others, but this was popular enough. I think basically everybody in the U.S. who had a Nintendo had one because they gave it away free with a subscription to Nintendo Power.
Really? Oh, wow. That's I didn't even know Nintendo Power gave away games at that point.
I think it was the only one they did, but it was a special where you could get your very own copy of Dragon Quest, which is a sizable game. I've been playing it all day and all yesterday, and I'm not done with it yet. Not very far with it yet. I think I keep getting... it's an open world game, though obviously they didn't have that word back then.
Oh, yeah.
And you can go wherever you like, but you will get your ass kicked.
Oh.
So I have been wandering around the world, gathering hints, and mostly getting my ass kicked. But it's a lot of fun. I'm liking it more than most modern RPGs because it's just very relaxing. I have the sound off and I listen to podcasts. I would recommend it. You can just go get an emulator and play an old school retro game. Don't have to pay $60 for it. Don't have to deal with stupid networking issues.
There you go. That does sound pretty relaxing.
It's great. What are you playing these days?
I decided to pick up Halo Wars 2. That was recently on sale. It came out a couple months ago, and I was looking for something new to play. I wouldn't say completely burned out on Overwatch, but Overwatch does get a little old from time to time.
There's only so much you can do with it. I don't know that it feels like it has a lot of staying power, but I don't know that it has the staying power of Team Fortress 2, which was enormously popular for several years.
We'll see. So far, it's been over a year. They've put out the anniversary loot boxes in that, which first time I bought a couple, and they've kept regular updates and adding stuff that is, for free. They've been updating new characters and maps for free, which is not really the norm though that is becoming the norm these days. Supplement
Paid for by the loot boxes, correct? And obviously,
correct, yeah.
but the loot boxes are probably their big seller, their big draw.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You put in new events like this anniversary event, and you make people want to buy the loot boxes. And I have no problem dropping a little bit of money on loot boxes just because it's like, well, we've got like 3 new characters post launch. I don't know how many maps post launch. I feel that dropping just a little bit of money is not too bad. Not overwhelming. It's low pressure too, because the loot, you do earn the loot boxes, and it still feels like a complete game. It's not like you're getting aped like mobile games are, So as far as that's concerned, and that in itself is an interesting model. I'm not going to get too much into details on that now. But yeah, I mean, I think we summed up the games and everything. Anything else we should talk about?
No, I think that's enough.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. And for anyone that views, thanks for watching. We'll try to get more of these out here and there. And have a good night.